hollowed out, you see? We see that typically in thermite. A number of these spheres are hollow. And this is from the World Trade Center, some spheres from the World Trade Center, the McKinley sample. They both form spheres. They both form liquid metal, mostly iron, at very high temperatures, so you form these spheres. So we got that part worked out. Oh, this is watch close. This goes fast. Okay, this is a commercially available thermite cutter for sale for demolition purposes, cutting through a metal rod. As you can see in a fraction of, there's the metal rod. Boom. Now when that hot molten iron sprays out like that and cuts through the metal, what do you get from the spray? Spheres. That's right. And we see an abundance of spheres. Is anything starting to fit together here? Okay, good. I'm going to talk about the chain of custody, the provenance of these samples. We have 4 samples now that we're studying in detail. The first was provided by Jeanette McKinley from her apartment across the street from the South Tower. Let's see, I'm not sure I can see it at this time. It's right about here. It's very close to the South Tower. When the South Tower collapsed, her windows broke in of her apartment. Her apartment was flooded with dust. She covered her head with a wet towel to get out of there. And here's a picture of her going back into her apartment. You see the windows broken here? You see the big hole there in the window? And just covered with dust. She said she had a feeling, a sense to save some of that dust, realizing the lives that had been lost, and almost a reverential feeling. She collected it in a plastic bag. As soon as she saw, or shortly after she saw my paper and heard about my request for samples from the World Trade Center, she sent me some of the dust, and that has led to this rather exciting pursuit now that we're following that reveals what happened. Because you see, the dust it's like a snapshot of what happened that day, right? The windows broke in, the dust comes, the dust carries with it information, including these iron-rich spheres. Sample 2, independent sample acquired by a PhD physicist on the 14th, just 3 days after 9/11. McKinley's was about a week after. This is 3 days after, about 4 blocks from the World Trade Center on an indoor window sill. There's enough pressure for the dust to get under the windowsill and collected inside. The scientist saved it so he could test for asbestos, which there is asbestos in this dust. Very dangerous stuff, nasty stuff. High alkalinity as well, even though the EPA said it was safe, which really bothers me. Told people to go back to work, particularly in the financial districts, and now thousands are dying, ill and dying from this dust. Estimated 15,000 people sick from breathing this terrible dust. And yet the EPA said it was safe. It's a very big concern. Scientists told them before they said that this dust was very dangerous. It's like liquid drain cleaner, one of the scientists said. Swayze was his name. He said, look, okay, I get going on those things. But it's a clear example of where the government was not telling the truth and put an interest of corporates, Wall Street, above people. Okay. A Sample 3 was obtained on or about the 12th of September, so just a day or a couple days after. And this email explains, I don't know if I'll read all of this, but on the 12th he went into the laundry room, and the window was open. He says down here about 3 or 4 inches. They closed the windows, and so he's not quite sure whether they collected the dust that same day or a couple days after. But the point is they close the window so they prevent contamination coming in. In this dust sample we see, again, these iron-rich spheres. So that rules out now that these spheres could come from cleanup where you're cutting through steel. This is the best sample we have, and I'd like to invite Tom Breidenbach and Frank Delessio to come up here. Do you hear Tom? Frank? Please come up, guys. I'll let them explain a little bit how they collected this. What I want to emphasize is that this was collected by Frank, as a student at a university, within 20 minutes of the collapse of the North Tower. So let me turn that over to Frank just for a minute, would you, Frank?
Hi. That morning, I was on the A train heading into Manhattan at a class early that morning, about 4 blocks from the Trade Center. I was on the last train that was allowed to, I was on the last train that stopped at High Street, Brooklyn Bridge. They informed us that no more trains were allowed to enter Manhattan due to a collapse. As I left the subway, there was a string of people coming from the Brooklyn Bridge. I followed my way onto the bridge. There's a mass exodus coming my way. Me and another girl, the only 2 people going towards Manhattan. I had a camera. I took a whole roll of photographs really rapidly. As I entered the Manhattan side of the Brooklyn Bridge, that's when the North Tower fell. Soot just came. We couldn't see. I fell. Then I was exiting the bridge. I scooped up a whole bunch of soot on the rail. It was piled up, sort of like snow, and then proceeded to head north towards the East Village, where I met my friend Tom.
Where did you put that?
Oh, I just carried it in the palm of my hand. Yeah. You know, it was history, show and tell. I knew that no one was really near there besides me. They weren't allowing people in specific perimeters. So it was it was just instinctively that I grabbed it. I was wearing a black button down. I was covered in soot. Yeah, I thought that would be something to hold on to. So I did swipe it from the rail. And then when I entered Tom's apartment, he was kind of shocked because I had it in my beard and hair and clothes, and I showed him the sample, and we immediately put it in a Ziploc, and he's held on to that since then.
Isn't that great? Say a word or two, would you, Tom?
Yeah, I'll just add that he came in and was covered with dust and showed me this dust that was in his hand, and we didn't know what to do with it, and I thought we were in shock, so we just put it in a bag, and I've been following 9/11 Truth closely for a while, and it wasn't until recently I watched a lecture of Dr. Jones's where he said we need more recent dust, so I got a hold of him and we sent him this sample. And I'll also just add that we later had gone down to see what was going on, and we were about 5 blocks north of Building 7 on the west side of the West Side Highway when about 20 minutes before it came down, we were told that they're going to bring it down. Remember, the gentleman about 15, 20 feet ahead of me turned around and said they're going to bring it down, and we were all looking at it and completely expecting it, and everybody's around us has our eyes just focused on Building 7 when it did about 20 minutes later just come down. So.
Isn't that amazing? Thanks. Let me ask you, gentlemen, did you add anything to the dust? Did you sprinkle it with iron spheres? Or?
No.
You'll be asked that in court someday probably, but thank you very much. Okay, you hope so, he says. Thank you. Thank you, Frank and Tom. So, world